So part of the reason why I'm doing this video on you doing the Chickadee here is to show you some of the cutters that we use in our classroom. We often get people asking about that. And I'm going to use for the roughing out the demonstration is I'm going to use a Foredom tool with a number 44 handpiece. You could use a micro motor and it'd take a little longer, or you could also use a knife. However you remove the wood isn't really as important as what you end up with at the end. Like I could rough out this, and I've done this many times where I rough out the top view just using a knife, carving along here. The cutters that we have in our classroom, we have a couple of bigger abrasive cutters that we put in the Foredom tool. That's at each one of our workstations. This little ball nose saber tooth burr is really probably the most useful overall of all the cutters we have that'll go into the Foredom tool. If you buy a Foredom tool, it comes with this Typhoon cylinder, which is a safe end cylinder. It doesn't have any grit on the end, so it's great for carving straight down and straight in on various cuts. We won't be doing any of that on the well, we'll be doing a little bit of on the head on the Chickadee. I'm not sure we'll want to use anything quite this big for that, but it's great if you have to carve straight down and straight in, come in at a right angle. It's a phenomenal cutter for that, but don't really have a huge amount of use for it. We could it might be for the roughing out part of this. It might be a more useful cutter than the ball end burr in this particular case. I could use either one. Ideally, my favorite cutter for that, but in the classroom, we don't do a lot of these kind of cuts. These are done on the bandsaw. So in the classroom, but if you have a cutter like this, which we don't have at the workstation, but I've got at my own workstation, I use this. I've got a fine cylinder like this that is got a square end on it. This is a saber tooth yellow fine cylinder, quarter-inch diameter, 2 inches long. And here's a Typhoon, which is also fine. Typhoon fines are all blue. So these are basically the same cutter. One's Typhoon sold by Foredom, and the other one's sold by Sabertooth. And this one has a ball end on it, and the ball end's quite useful sometimes for various aspects. But if you're going to be doing something like this, where you want to just cut straight down, like have a cut that looks like it was done on a bandsaw, having a cutter like this is really, really ideal. I'm going to show you how I do it with the cutter the Typhoon that comes with the Foredom kit. If you, like I said, if you bought a Foredom kit, you'd have one of these if the Foredom SR kits come with this, along with a bunch of other cutters. So with Foredom, you got a little pin that goes through the middle of the handpiece. You can change the collets in this handpiece by unscrewing the little collet nut at the end. That just threaded. Eventually it comes off, and your collet that's in the inside it's easier to get it out if you hold a bit. You can pull the collet out like that. So that's what the collet looks like. This one's a quarter-inch collet. These kits typically come with a 3/32 and a 1/8 inch collet. We don't, in the classroom anyway, we don't use any of the smaller collets in this because we have micromotor tools. But so what you want to do is you want to just kind of twist this until this little pin goes through the middle, kind of keeps things from turning. You can put your cutter in there and then just keep on tightening up this collet nut until it's somewhat snug. You could put this all the way down in here like this. I prefer to leave it out just, a little bit anyway. I've got maybe 3/8 of an inch. Snug that up. And then there's a wrench that comes with this. So you want to make sure that this cutter is good and tight. So that's where the wrench comes in. So now you make sure that the pin's out of there, is turning freely. My Foredom tool has a forward and reverse switch to it because I'm using the SR model. And I'll just turn the switch to the forward position. I have a foot control. You can't see it obviously, but I have a foot control that allows me to turn on the cutter like this, and I can vary the speed on the foot control. to give me more or less speed. The other thing that I can do is I can get this in going in reverse, because there are times, and I'll demonstrate that, there are times when reverse makes a lot more sense. So I'm turning on my little dust collector here using a Razor 530 that we use in the classroom with 2 filter stages. And so now here's the key, and this is where your vertical reference line is very, very important, is that you always want the cutter to be starting and staying parallel to your vertical reference line. I wouldn't card like this or like this. I always want to try to keep that cutter parallel to my vertical reference line. And so now, essentially, if I keep it parallel like this and start carving, the simplest, and I can pour it like on my Foredom, I can just give it full gas and just go flat out. Keep this parallel to my vertical reference line and start carving down. Now what I want to do is I want to, in keeping it at that angle all the time, I don't go like this and I don't go like that. Try to hold it at the same angle all the time. I just keep going and carving down until I hit my pencil line. So as much as possible, try to hold this parallel to your vertical reference line. I know it's tempting sometimes to go like this, but the theory behind this is that you get a nice straight cut if you just hold this parallel to your vertical reference line and keep on going until you hit your pencil line. You see what's reference line all the time. Come in here and very, very carefully. So even with a big cutter like this, you see you can do some pretty accurate stuff coming down from the side. Later, but right now what I'm going to do is I want to do the front part of this. So once again, starting with the cutter parallel to the vertical reference line like this, lay it down and just keep on going. Keep on carving down at that angle until you get to your pencil line. Take your time. Don't push real hard. Sometimes people get impatient. It doesn't take but a minute or two to do this. I'm carving a basswood blank right now. Same issue if you're carving it on a tupelo or some other wood. Exactly the same process. And if I was carving with a knife, I would do the same thing. I would just, keep carving until I get down to my pencil line. In this particular case, because this cutter isn't really, really big like that, I have to do this in 2 stages. And these cutters are quite aggressive and abrasive, and sometimes if they catch a corner like this when you're going off the far end, they'll want to grab and run around. So this is where the reverse setting comes in on your power tool. You can get this going the other direction. And again, just hold this parallel to your vertical reference line. You don't have to push very hard, but it's pushing the wood away from me. And I just keep going until everything's kind of smooth there. Smaller cutter. So that's using the cutters that we have in our classroom. That's using this cutter that comes with a Foredom set. If you were going to use the something a little bigger, and I don't actually have this. We have a couple of these in the classroom, but we don't have one at each workstation, just simply because we don't really have a need for all of these, every workstation to have a cutter like this. But so I put a long, fine cutter in here like this, and they do make them in, I've got one here that's a saber tooth that's the extra coarse. They make these in fine and coarse as well. Like, so you can get this one in yellow with the fine tooth pattern on it. And it's a really useful one for roughing out. This particular one's great for roughing out big pieces because it's very aggressive. But to do a little chickadee, it would be overkill. So I tighten this little saber tooth burr up here. And now, same thing. I hold this parallel to my vertical reference line like that. And I'll turn this back to forward. Parallel to my vertical reference line, and just This is a lot easier because it spans the entire width of the bird. So it actually does make it a little easier for this step. I like the longer cutters if I'm doing this step at home on a carving, I would use this, but you'll notice that I'm always parallel to my vertical reference line. And just keep on going down until I get to my pencil mark. And I know a lot of times for a lot of carvers, there's a big temptation to to come in, turn it up and carve down to your pencil line, but that's not gonna give you the results you need. So I smooth that off now. So you see what I've got here in getting the top view cut out on this. If you have access to a cutter like this, that's ideal. If you don't have access to something like that, something shorter and smaller will work. And so those are the main cutters that we use on the Foredom tool. I was going to mention just this is not the time that you would use anything like this, but I want to show you how a cushion sander works. Because if you're looking at cutters and tools for a Foredom, there's lots of variety. There's a whole bunch of different things that you can put in the Foredom. Like you've got other bigger cutters here, and they all have their place. This is safe end with a taper on it. These little triangular ones are great for doing flat areas and for getting into corners and stuff. There's all kinds of shapes. I don't even know, like Sabertooth makes hundreds of different kinds of cutters. You can see them all on our website. But the other one that I wanted to talk about is what's called a cushion sander here. These are a little sander with a 1/4 inch shank on them. They're available in several different sizes, but they have some foam in here, and they use a very nice flexible cloth back paper, the Swiss purple sandpaper, made by Sia. And all of these things are things that we carry, but we use them a lot in our classroom. So at this stage, you've just got your bird roughed out here, and it's not until you get the whole bird rounded off that you're going to really want to use a cushion sander. But I wanted to demonstrate the cushion sander so you can see how they work. They just there's a little tube in the inside here there's a little tool that comes with it that you can pull that tube out, and that's for changing your sandpaper. Just use a little flat piece of sandpaper, and it's sitting on a nice cushion, so it's squishy. And when it comes time to sand and smooth something, which I stress you wouldn't need to do right now, but you can see there's saw cuts and marks and that kind of stuff on the side of this bird. You could sand them out by hand, or you can take a cushion sander like this, and you don't run these flat out. You just run them at lower RPMs. But you take this cushion sander and you go over, and you can see how quickly that smoothed up most of what's there. I'm not really carving a lot here. I'm just trying to smooth things off. Just more as a demonstration of how well this thing smooths surfaces. So taking all the tool cuts from what we had before, going over the side of this thing. Now I haven't, you see it's only been a few passes, but look how smooth that is already. All the tool marks are out of it.